vague confidence that maybe if you see it through, there might be something at the end for you. That's not what he's saying. If you labor, there is honor waiting you. There is great hope awaiting you. There is joy unspeakable awaiting you. Now, John Calvin writes, he, that is Isaiah, declares that Christ, after having suffered, shall obtain the fruit of his death in the salvation of men. When he says he shall see, we must apply the words fruit and efficacy. Man. Is it possible to labor in vain in the will of God? I submit to you it's not. It is not possible to labor in vain if you are in the will of God. Can a missionary go to a foreign field, lose his entire family there, labor all his life and never see one convert? Yes, that can happen. And will it be in vain? Absolutely not. I don't know about you. That makes me want to do something. That gives me the greatest of confidence. It's not in vain. This trial I'm going through, you might think to yourself, why? Why am I going through it? Why? This is just vain. No, it's not. If God is sovereign, it's not in vain. It is not in vain. Now, there will be fruit from it, and it is effectual. Is there anything in your life that's not effectual if the providence of God is behind it? Absolutely not. So everything you're going through, the rocks in my yard are effectually working. God, by his sovereignty, placed each one of those in the exact place where I decided we ought to plant a tree. That is effectual. If you haven't discovered it by now, I am doing battle with my dirt. It's effectual. You see. And be satisfied. The Messiah would be completely satisfied in his accomplishment. The word satisfied comes from a Hebrew word which means to be satisfied, sated, or filled. Satiate. It's not this idea of, oh, that's good. No, it's the idea of just this deep, enduring, pleasant satisfaction. I think more than anything what I would want for you, if you were my sons, is to live in such a way in the grace of God that every night when you put your head on the pillow, there would be a deep, enduring satisfaction. That regardless of what happened, if you spent the whole day just trying to buy truck tires and could not accomplish that, yet you would know you had done that day to the best of your ability by the grace of God, the will of God. And go to sleep satiated. Go to sleep content in that. Now, it means to have one's fill, to have in excess. I love that. Heaven is excessive. Okay? It's in excess. God doesn't just dribble grace on you. He doesn't just give mercy drops round us are falling. He lavishes stuff on you. Spiritual blessings in the heavenlies. We say, man, that's in excess. It's only in excess if it's out of the will of God, if it's of the world. Like I can eat cheesecake in excess, and that can be very bad for me. But heaven is excess. It's abundance. It's fullness. It's without limit. It's pleasures forevermore in the presence of God. Now, not some Muslim carnal heaven. full of carnal pleasures, but pleasures of peace and righteousness and love, the things that truly, really matter. Now, Matthew Poole writes, "He shall esteem his own and his Father's glory and the salvation of his people, an abundant recompense for all his sufferings." First of all, what's going on here? He is satisfied with what? That God has been glorified in his person and in his work, that God has been glorified. If you can come to the end of the day and say, I'm satisfied in this, that God has been glorified. Also, as we look, the salvation of his people. He rejoiced that there would be a people. Let me assure you of something. There is a judgment, even for the believer, and I don't understand exactly how all that works. But I can share with you this, and please understand it. The first time you look in the face of your Savior, you are not going to see a scowl. You are not going to see a dread. You are not going to see this attitude of, oh gosh, this one. But I think that's the way a lot of believers live their life. They live their life under a scowl. No, the cross did away with that. No frowning face. No anger. He has waited how many thousands of years to see his bride complete, to bring her home, and the first thing he's going to do when he meets with her is reprimand her? What kind of salvation is that? Now again, there is a judgment, and I don't know how it works, but I want to tell you something. Take heart, little flock. Take heart, weak sheep. Little lamb. The shepherd is not coming to get you in order to beat you with a rod. He was beaten with the rod. John Calvin writes, "This is full of the sweetest consolation, for Isaiah could not have better expressed the infinite love of Christ toward us than by declaring that he takes the highest delight in our salvation, that he rests in it as the fruit of his labors, and he who has obtained his wish rests in that which he most ardently desired. For no person can be said to be satisfied but he who has obtained what he wished so earnestly as to disregard everything else and be satisfied with this alone." He's talking about you. You know, people who have a really big problem with Calvin have never read Calvin. Listen to what he's saying. He's saying this is such a great consolation for us. No one is satisfied in something they abhor. No one is delighted about meeting a person they can't stand to be in the room with. He is satisfied in you. Now, of course, we need to back up here and understand, what does that mean? He's satisfied in you because of the work he has done for you, in you, and will complete. It's like we see there in the Song of Solomon, where the king is talking about the beauty of his bride's necklace. It's just absolutely gorgeous. He delights in it. But then you got to ask yourself, where'd the girl get the necklace? The king is delighting in that which he gave her. He cleaned her up, dressed her up, and delighted in what he made. That is you. That is you. That's great consolation. Great consolation. Now, John Gill writes, "Now the fruit of all this he sees with inexpressible pleasure." Now, let me say something. It's very important, because I know some men who I highly respect who do this, and they're wrong. They're just wrong. Now, does the church at times need to be rebuked? Yes. Does she need to be exhorted? Absolutely. Encouraged? Always. But I hear men who will say horrible things about the church. Stinking, the church is just acting like a whore. Using terminology from the Old Testament. My friend, I wouldn't suggest you ever say something like that about my wife.